Good evening from the nation's capital. I'm David Aiken. Thank you so much for watching. We start tonight in battleground Quebec. 7 days until Election Day, and it is getting weird and wild. The latest over the weekend, an aging and beloved Quebecois television star warning that without the PQ Charter of Values, why rich Muslim students at McGill could take over the province's swimming pools. I kid you not. Our chief Quebec election correspondent Giuseppe Valientes gets us started with the tale of Jeanette Bertrand and how her warning is playing out on the campaign trail. Giuseppe.
David, I think that not just you, I think all of us, especially covering this campaign, think that would hope that what Madame Bertrand said was a joke, but no, it wasn't. And as you mentioned, she was Madame Bertrand, close to 90 years old this weekend, at a secular lunch. She spoke at a campaign stop, and she was talking about the dangers of fundamentalism in Quebec. Now, Madame Bertrand also has been a vocal feminist. She's been fighting for equality between men and women for a long time now, and that's part of the reason why the PQ leader Pauline Marois brought her on board and to speak at this lunch. Madame Bertrand said that, and as you mentioned, she gave an example of the problems of fundamentalism in Quebec. That when she tried to swim in her pool in her apartment, there were two men that were unhappy that she was there, and she said that these rich students, if they had their way, because the building's manager wants to keep them in the building because they're rich McGill students, that this is one step, and the next step is that all the pools in Quebec will have certain prohibitions against women. So you have the rich, the McGill, the Anglophone, because it's McGill, Muslims as well. I shouldn't say the word Muslim, but everyone in the room knew who she was talking about. I mean, this is I mean, we haven't really seen a lot of this kind of rhetoric in the campaign. However,
this sort of scaremongering or fear-mongering, and then it took a long time for the PQ leadership, who very much like Madame Bertrand, took them a long time, Bernard Drainville, Jean-François Lisée, to respond to this and to say, this is a bit silly.
I mean, David, maybe you heard something I didn't, because Pauline Marois today said that Miss Bertrand said nothing xenophobic.
There we go.
They said that this morning. Marois said nothing xenophobic was said, and that Madame Bertrand was just speaking with her heart.
And yet, but it's a ludicrous thing to say, that the fact that there will be people of non-Christian faith in Quebec will threaten the swimming pool access for Quebec women.
This was the comments were universally panned, even from people who support the charter, from opposition politicians, obviously, but journalists, pundits. No one's really supporting these particular comments, except, of course, for the PQ, it seems.
Let me ask you about the party in third place. That's Francois Legault's CAQ. Yes. They have been trailing in every poll we've seen, but they took the extraordinary step of releasing a poll that they had commissioned by Crop, a reputable pollster, which showed that after that debate last week, the one in which Legault was on fire, came out swinging. Boy, oh boy, the CAQ has got some life in it. Tell us about this poll.
Okay, now this poll was done by Crop. It was only given to the Globe and Mail newspaper, so I asked for it today, and the party's not releasing it, not releasing any other details. So we don't know the details of the poll. What we do know is, according to the poll, 1,000 people were surveyed. They were only francophones, and that's important. It's a key demographic for, obviously, for all the parties, and it shows that the Parti Québécois has dropped significantly. The poll that we did, that Léger Marketing did for us, had the PQ at 40%. This poll has them at 36%. The Liberals are relatively stable. They're at 29. Our poll last week put them at 30, which is interesting. And the CAQ jumped from 17 to 24. 17 was our poll. 24 is the Crop poll. Now, why I say it's interesting is because it seems that the francophone votes that are going to the CAQ are coming from the Parti Québécois. The Liberals have stayed relatively stable. So that's interesting how the CAQ vote that went to the Liberals is perhaps staying in terms of the francophone vote, but the CAQ vote from the Parti Québécois is moving back to the CAQ. So we'll have to. I mean, this is one poll. There's 1,000 people, only francophones. There'll be more polls coming out, but it definitely shows, if we're to believe this poll, that that debate was clearly a significant factor for François Legault. He seemed like a man who had nothing to lose, and he really came out strong during the debate. And whether you saw the debate or not, everyone was talking about it for days after. And so people, they reading the newspapers, listening on the radio, on the TV, were hearing nonstop how Legault really was a force during the debate.
Giuseppe Valiente in Montreal getting us started tonight. You'll be back in the program later. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, David.
All right, now, excuse me, a Quebec Green Party candidate has been refused the right to vote. The candidate can't vote, and essentially makes him ineligible to run in the election. The candidate is Brendan Edge. He is the Green Party candidate for the riding of Chambly-Laval, and he was turned down due to insufficient proof that he was, quote, domiciled or living in Quebec. Edge, who works and pays taxes in Quebec, moved to the province 3 years ago to study at McGill University. Candidates in the election must take an oath that they are eligible to vote. While this is based on the honor system, Edge could face legal action if he makes a false oath and is elected in the riding. Go figure. Decision day in Quebec came early for some as advance polls opened up to voters. Early voting for the April 7th election began yesterday and continues today until 8 p.m. Eastern. One Quebecer who cast a ballot beforehand is a familiar political face. That guy, former Premier Jean Charest, he made his choice at a polling station in Westmount yesterday. And Parti Québécois leader Pauline Marois will not be taking advantage of governmental benefits now that she has hit a milestone year. Marois celebrated her 65th birthday on Saturday, and she said she would not take her entitled federal old age pension payment because she is gainfully employed, well, at least for the next week. The PQ leader continued to campaign on her big day and even hinted at her wish, saying, "I think you can guess. I hope it will come on April the 7th. Well, happy birthday, Madame Marois. Talk show host, Sun Media columnist Eric Duhaime is in Montreal. Eric, there's so many things going on in this campaign I can start with. But let me start with Jeanette Bertrand and this stuff. Lisée, Drainville, Marois, the whole gang of them. I know she's a very popular television personality, but surely they can say, listen, Madame Bertrand, what you're saying is silly.
Well, look, the woman is close to 90 years old. It's not the first time that she says something silly regarding the Charter of Values of the Parti Québécois. As some of our viewers will recall, she was the one a few months ago who said that she would be scared if there was a veiled woman in a hospital that was, taking care of her because she thinks that she would let her die before, and she would prefer saving a man's life instead of hers, and that's why she didn't want to be, she didn't want to meet a Muslim in a hospital. So the last statement of Madame Bertrand was not surprising. It's just shocking that the Parti Québécois is using her politically on the eve of the election to try to wedge on the charter, since they know that she's the kind of person that could have that kind of statement, and that's more concerning. The fact that Madame Bertrand, she's a woman of her of a few decades ago in Quebec. She did a lot of great things. She was a very, a feminist, an activist on many progressive issues. It's funny because she spent a lot of her life trying to fight ignorance and people who had, who were homophobic or against women, or she defended small groups like that. It's very funny that today she's the one that is showing ignorance and intolerance vis-a-vis other Quebecers, because she fought against that her whole life during. And it's the Parti Québécois is trying to wedge on that issue. They're trying to bring back the campaign on the charter because it's the only thing that has worked since for the last 6 months in Quebec. Nothing's working for them, it seems, during the election campaign. And now we're at that point. And what impact is it going to have? Or is it going to turn off even more people who were on the verge of voting Parti Québécois because they don't want to be associated to those kind of statements? I don't know anybody in Quebec today that is under 50 years old that went through all what Madame Bertrand was talking about over the weekend, and for which the reality that she was describing has anything close to do with what's going on in their current lives.
Let me ask you about this poll that the CAQ released to the Globe, because I find it interesting, and your thoughts about the strategy, why that party would release it. My thinking is they want to show their workers that, hey, they're still in the game. But to us watching this, it's pretty clear what the CAQ should be doing. Go after the PQ. Go after Marois. They're not getting anything from Couillard. That's getting it all from Parti Québécois voters.
And they should almost thank the Parti Québécois if the CAQ is going up, because it happened just after François Legault had a very strong performance in the latest debate on TVA last week. But it also comes after a week where the Parti Québécois was trying to wedge on integrity. And when we look at the polls and we look about the integrity, who people trust, obviously they think that Liberals or Parti Québécois, it's the exact same thing. And there's going to be a new scandal coming out tonight about Pauline Marois' husband with some funding at the Parti Québécois. And so the Parti Québécois is trying to say we're Mr. Clean, but when you look at them, their track record is not very different than the Liberals. So the only ones who are benefiting from the fact that it's back on the integrity file is probably the CAQ. So those numbers that we're seeing increasing right now could still go up for another week, because there might be more and more people that are saying, look, if this vote is about integrity, then maybe we should go with the CAQ.
Let me ask you about Sunday night on one of those networks in Quebec, Tout le monde en parle. It's the TV program watched by a ton. A lot of politicians have come on the program and saw their fortunes soar, like Jack Layton. Some not so good. Last night it was Marois and Couillard on. What's the buzz day after about their performance?
Well, we have to know, like it's CBC French. I know it's always shocking for an English-Canadian audience to hear that, but they're usually more on the Parti Québécois side and more on the separatist and leftist side on all of those issues. So what was surprising last night was not that Couillard had a very strong and tough interview. That was expected, but also Pauline Marois. That's what shocked a lot of commentators and observers today, is the fact that she also had a hard time. She was even asked by one of the guesses there about her husband's link and deals with the FTQ, with the unions. So that was it was not an easy interview as it used to be for Pauline Marois at Tout le monde en parle. From a Parti Québécois leader, usually they have a better time when they show up on that kind of TV show. Last night it was a hard time for Pauline Marois, and that's also another bad news for the Parti Québécois. When even at Tout le monde en parle, you're challenged, it's not going well for the PQ.
Eric Duham in Montreal for us tonight. Eric, thank you so much. Talk to you later in the week.
Always a pleasure, David. Thank you.